So good afternoon and welcome to the Ohio Workforce Coalition's January webinar. We are super excited to be able to kick it off with our guests from the National Skills Coalition. Before we get started, I want to just flag a couple housekeeping items. Please mute your line. We are not going to be using video cameras for attendees, so you can turn them on if you're speaking, but otherwise you can leave them off. And feel free to engage through the chat, ask questions, introduce yourselves. We're really hoping as we continue to build community that we all get to know each other a bit better. We do have a relatively large group today, so we'll be holding questions until the end of the session. And you can enter them into the chat throughout. We can try to intersperse them. And we'll certainly try to get to as many as possible. So about the Ohio Workforce Coalition, since 2007, the coalition has been bringing together leaders from across multiple systems in Ohio, specifically to advance the workforce development issues of Ohioans, our employers, and to help improve the public workforce system and all of the partners within it. So we are the SkillSPAN member of representative from Ohio, and we are, like I said, excited to be hearing from NSC today. We will also be sharing more information about our policy priorities in the coming weeks, so keep an eye out for that. And let's dive in. So again, thank you to Jessica and Caroline for joining us today. The National Skills Coalition has been advocating for advancements and improvements in Ohio, or in national skills policy since 2000. So the speakers today are members of their federal policy team. I am going to post their LinkedIn profiles in the chat box so that we save time and make the most of their presence. So with that, I am going to share them, hand the mic to Jessica.
Hi, everyone. It's really nice to see a lot of familiar faces and a lot of new ones. I know that a lot of you have historically joined us in DC around this time for our fly-in, the Skills Summit, and because of the pandemic, we're not able to do that this year. So it's great to be able to move the advocacy forward. I'm gonna share my screen. If you can just give me one moment, a little bit of patience. Okay, does everyone see the right thing? Okay, good. All right, so again, welcome. We're really happy to be here. We're going to talk today about National Skills Coalition's agenda for the next administration, for the new Congress. It's called Skills for an Inclusive Economic Recovery. So I'm Jessica Cardott. I'm the Senior National Network Manager at National Skills, and I'm joined by my colleague Caroline Treschitta, who's a policy analyst. If you're less familiar with National Skills Coalition, we focus on jobs that require skills training, and we believe that they're the backbone of our economy. We fight for a national commitment to inclusive, high-quality skills training so that more people have access to a better life and more local businesses see sustained growth. So we've grown a lot over the years. Historically, we were primarily did federal advocacy. And over the last few years, we've expanded. So we have Business Leaders United, which is the business arm of our work. SkillSPAN, which Rebecca leads for Ohio, which we're very happy about, does work at the state level and sort of creates people in coalition to do work at every level. And then we also have Voices for Skills, which is newer as well. And the campaign is primarily a storytelling worker sort of grassroots organizing campaign for folks that have gone through skills training to sort of advocate for the work that they do. So just to walk through the agenda briefly, Caroline is going to sort of walk through all of the planks of our agenda. There's going to be 8 of them. And then I'm going to sort of talk about what the advocacy that we're doing now is and what to look forward to in the future. And then how best for the Ohio delegation, including Ohio SkillSPAN, including the Ohio Workforce Coalition, to plug in. And then, because that's going to be a lot of information, I think Rebecca is going to sort of walk us through a Q&A. Also, I encourage you, because especially there are so many planks of the agenda, to feel free to put it in the chat as you think of it so you don't lose it. And then we can revisit it during the questions and answers. But it's great to be here and great to see everybody. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Caroline.
Hi, everyone. Great to be presenting for you all today. As mentioned, I'm a policy analyst for our government affairs team, and I'm going to be walking through National Skills Coalition's Skills for an Inclusive Economic Recovery, which is really our call to action for the new administration and represents our strategy over the next 2 years. A little bit about this framework. It aims to address the disproportionate impact of COVID-19 on workers of color, on immigrants, and on workers with a high school diploma or less. It also aims to elevate the essential role of small businesses who hire locally and invest in their people, but need policymakers to be their partner. And finally, we really try to center the moral and economic imperative to dismantle structural racism within workforce education and training. So I say all that kind of with the caveat that while, of course, inclusive skills training can change lives, it's not, a silver bullet or, a magical solution to, solving this economic crisis, but we do believe it's one important tool. There are so many other factors that limit the ability of America's workers to achieve their aspirations, but we have these 8 policy planks that we hope will make a difference. And we mobilized our national, state, business, and worker networks that Jessica just walked through to advance this call to action. So that's a little bit about the framework. And now I'll move into the 8 planks. So the first one is about our safety net. I think COVID-19 has really underscored the need for a better safety net to be able to cushion people from immediate hardship, as well as give them time to get back on an extended pathway back into the labor market. We see time and time again that forcing people into low-wage jobs as a condition of the safety net hurts workers, it doesn't advance our economy, and it hurts businesses as well who want to hire trained workers. So things like eliminating work requirements for SNAP, expanding SNAP eligibility for students are all ways to sort of remove those barriers and make our economy a bit more inclusive. Our second one is about guaranteeing income, healthcare, training, and reemployment support for displaced workers. Again, the pandemic has shown that we really need a different approach to supporting displaced workers as they get ready for the next job. When the pandemic subsides, workers who lost their jobs aren't going to be able to return to the same companies or even the same occupations. Instead, many are going to need retraining to get a new job, and they're going to need income, supportive services like healthcare while they're retraining. So we are aiming to align different programs to provide a more comprehensive reemployment response. We have a publication around this plank called the 21st Century Reemployment Accord. So if this is a piece of the policy agenda that interests you in particular, I can certainly send that link around. And the third one is about publicly funded job creation programs. Specifically with this one, we're thinking about infrastructure. The Biden administration has indicated, and we are hoping that revamping our unfortunately crumbling infrastructure will be a priority for this administration. And also kind of thinking about infrastructure broadly, physical infrastructure, digital infrastructure, clean energy infrastructure as well. And by revamping all of that, we're going to create millions of good jobs. And We want to make sure those jobs are going to people within the communities where the infrastructure is being built, as well as centering those most impacted by the pandemic, including people of color, immigrants, and women. Our fourth plank, excuse me if I'm going through these a little bit fast, but as Jessica mentioned, feel free to put any questions in the chat. So our fourth plank is about investing in local businesses who are really, some of the backbone of our economy. And we see that COVID has really impacted small and mid-sized businesses disproportionately across industries. And to reduce ongoing economic hardship for businesses and workers and to work towards recovery, we need to see investments in small businesses to help them avert layoffs, keep their employees paid, and support employee retraining during downtime. The fifth one is about sector partnerships, which we've seen time and time again, and we've heard from so many network partners that are really sometimes the key to good training programs. As the economy begins to recover, hopefully, the demand for trained workers is going to increase, but that demand is probably going to be uneven and going to vary by sector. So investing in industry-based training models to develop locally specific industry-targeted strategies is going to help workers, businesses, and communities adapt to a changing economy. Sixth is, of course, a big one. I've heard it's an important issue here in Ohio, expanding access to digital learning for all workers. I think, of course, COVID-19 has accelerated what was already a high demand for equitable access to digital learning. And I think this one specifically also highlights a lot of the racial inequities when it comes to digital access. So expanding access for all workers is going to be key to ensuring that everyone has access to proper training in a COVID-19 environment where so much of the learning is done online. And I think also ensuring that that access is equitable across urban and rural areas is something we want to center with this policy plank as well. And the seventh one is high quality, job ready education for those ready to re-enter the labor market, including making college work for working people. I think now more than ever, we are seeing kind of non-traditional students enter into post-secondary education. These are often working adults who need to balance family obligations and, other amidst a pandemic. So ensuring that this type of education includes access to childcare, transportation, et cetera, is really important. And also making sure that we are kind of nimble in responding to rapid industry shifts. Yeah, okay, I think we can move on to the eighth one. And then the last one is about data transparency, which, might not sound like the most exciting topic, but is really integral to making sure that we are able to recover equitably in this economy, making sure we have access to what demographics have lost their jobs, what programs are leading to high wages, et cetera. Having data transparency is really integral to an inclusive economic recovery from COVID-19. So those are the 8 policy planks. I tried to go at a high level there. We also, I think Jessica linked it in the chat if you're looking for more information. And then we also have a federal policy agenda, which links specific bills to each of those planks, which I can put in the chat as well. And I'm happy to answer questions about any of those 8 planks. And then Jessica's going to discuss a little bit about kind of where we are now in the campaign.
Thanks, Caroline. So we were sort of caught between respecting the time allotted and also understanding that there was a lot of information. And part of the opportunity of being with you all today is to make sure that we can sort of go through. So I wanted to take a moment to see if anyone had any questions about the different planks. It might be helpful to sort of, now that Caroline has given the foundation, walking through each one just to check in about any questions. So let's see. Does anyone have any questions about the safety net goal? Okay. About policy goal number 2. Policy goal 3 about publicly funded job creation. Investing in local businesses.
So I had a question. I threw it in the chat around investing in local businesses. Does that have any kind of focus or prioritization around minority-owned businesses?
I would say definitely. I think as we've been developing these policies and planks, we've certainly been trying to elevate minority-owned businesses and their needs. But I would say definitely open to suggestions about how we can do that more so and prioritize them more. I don't know if there's anything you'd add, Jessica.
Yeah, from what I understand, and even though these goals are baked, the vehicles and the details about them are not, because it depends on the opportunities that we have to push them forward, right? And so the Skills for an Inclusive Economic Recovery, the whole crux of it is that we are creating opportunities for people that have historically been left out. And that goes on both sides in terms of the workers and like the sort of industry that supports them. And so that seems to gel perfectly with that. It's just a matter of how that actually looks once, we sort of develop champions on the Hill and things like that. So that's definitely something that Caroline can take back, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
So anything about sector partnerships, policy goal number 5? This is a sort of tried and true. National Skills has been working on this for a long time. This is a big can of worms that matters to everybody, but does anyone have any specific questions in regards to Ohio or your work in terms of expanding access to digital learning for workers?
Would this include literally broadband access laying I wonder if it comes in infrastructure or it comes here, actually literally putting wiring or putting wires down or fiber optic or whatnot.
do you want me to take a shot at that or?
Yeah, go for it.
And you can, so as far as I understand it, Rebecca, because everything is focused on skills training, we have it from sort of 2 ends, right? So not the literal laying of the fiber, but who is, can have access to the jobs to do that and what kind of training that they need. And then on the other end of it, in terms of the digital access is once those cables are laid, who is going to have access to the internet that they need in order to improve their skills. So it's the people receiving the internet and the people actually doing the infrastructure component of it in terms of their skills, but I don't think it actually includes the sort of like the financing of the laying and things like that, where it's meant to be in conjunction, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. Thank you. Yeah, it seems like a great opportunity for job creation, certainly. But yes, that makes sense. Thank you.
Caroline, did you have anything to add about that?
Yes, I was just going to say, I think your initial thought there that it kind of relates to the infrastructure ask as well is right. I think it's kind of a cross cut of both of those planks.
So policy goal 7, the high quality job ready education.
What framework are you using for high quality?
We have a couple senior fellows who work on making sure that post-secondary degree credentials, kind of fall into the quality category. We have a publication, Expanding Opportunities, that kind of delves into how we define quality. And we developed that criteria in consultation with 12 states. And then states are then able to adapt that kind of general criteria to their own needs. I realize that's sort of a roundabout answer, but let me drop the link in the chat there.
Great.
Yeah, and while Caroline's doing that, I can add, and you already said this, Caroline, but just to dig a little deeper, is that our colleague Amy Ellen Duke Benfield, who's been in post-secondary education for her entire career, and I like to brag about her. She's very well respected. We're very happy to have her on our team. But she's actually running a quality assurance academy that's populated by people that work for the state and people on the ground, trying to really nail down best practices for this. And so we're sort of working in conjunction with her as these opportunities for bills move forward to make sure that, there's no sort of hard and fast about what quality looks like at this point.
Thank you.
Could I ask one more question about the second half of that emphasizes making college work for working people, but high quality job ready education. I assume you're including all kinds of post-secondary education in that phrase?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of our agenda wasn't focused on, the more traditional college experience. So we wanted to make sure at least one of the planks kind of centered around that.
Thank you.
And then I just wanted to ask is this where adult education is connected in any way? So somebody that doesn't have a high school equivalency and needs to re-enter the workforce, job ready, but needs that connection. Is that where you're thinking of adult education somehow connecting to this?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And then I would say adult education is also in a lot of our investment asks that Jessica is going to get a bit more into a little bit later in our presentation, but making sure that there's adult education programs as well.
Yeah, and just to add to that, adult ed has been a major component of our work historically, and it is tied to this goal. Unfortunately, I've actually already heard feedback that adult ed isn't as explicit as it has been historically in this agenda. And, some people are disappointed by that. And I hear that, and it is baked in. It's not as explicit as it has been, but it's definitely a part of the plan. And if you have specific things that you want to lift up about that also, we really encourage you to email us and to keep in touch with us, because as we said, the way that this actually shapes out is going to be based on feedback that we receive from you and things that we hear on the Hill in terms of what's possible.
I think the biggest thing with adult education is, why when you're not listing it in there, the partnership doesn't look obvious. And I think the biggest thing is I don't think it should be an adult education pot of money and then a high quality job ready pot of money. It should be, how does adult education feed into and braid into people preparing for these job ready education? So I think that would be probably the way in which the language should move.
Thank you. And I might follow, is that Jill? Who was that?
Lori Atkins.
Oh, Lori, great. Okay. And I might follow up with you also.
Sure, no problem.
And then the data transparency piece, policy goal 8.
Hi, Caroline and Jessica. Carrie Cart here.
Hi,
Thank
Carrie.
you for being with us. It's always a pleasure to listen and see what's rolling out from the National Skills Coalition. Around this data transparency accountability, I'm wondering, because we're seeing just, a sentence here, if embedded into this work is more workforce training and education policies to advance racial equity, And, I just happened to have pulled out NSC's The Roadmap for Racial Equity, which was published in 2019, a few days ago. And I'm just wondering if within this work, is there, those policy solutions for embedding racial equity goals within post-secondary attainment or within workforce plans, or so just was curious.
Caroline, did you want to?
Yeah, sorry, I just want to make sure I understand. Are you asking, are there policy solutions in the roadmap piece or in skills for
racial equity pieces embedded into these different goals? We talk about data transparency, accountability. We're talking about education, higher ed. I'm just curious about the whole racial equity platform from NSC, and if there's pieces and parts embedded into each of these policy goals.
Oh, okay, I see. Definitely. I think when we created this framework, we definitely tried to center the disproportionate impact on people of color that the COVID-19 has been having. So I would say it's really at the center of all of these 8 planks.
So in saying that, I'm sorry, I'm just going to ask one more question if I might. So in saying that, are we, asking, it's one of the ask for, just like embed racial equity goals within post-secondary attainment, include racial equity goals in career tech or in state workforce development plans? Does it get that specific?
Yeah, I think that all sounds right to me. And tying it back to the 8th plank, I think making sure that we have that publicly available data about who's getting jobs and who's enrolled in these programs helps advance those goals.
And I could add to that too, if what I'm hearing is right from Carrie, a lot of that is also at the state level. And so our state team is working really hard. A lot of the racial equity framework is based on more local avenues as well. And so it's about everyone sort of working in tandem. And so there's like no specific bill that necessarily points to it. It's, a lot of it is about implementation and things like that. That sort of, it's an ongoing conversation, but that everything is rooted in creating more access for more people that have been historically marginalized. Okay. And if you have any follow-up, Carrie, we can also connect you to folks that draft, that authored that and some of the intentions that they have moving forward, because, like these planks are based for attention with the new Congress and new administration, like I said, so it's not as, the specifics are not as baked as some things might be at the state level and things like that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And then, Caroline, I'm going to ask this to you on behalf of Rebecca, because she put it in the chat. But what we're hearing from new leadership or the transition team about their priorities. Actually, should we? It's just funny because we have a Capitol Hill update, and I feel like that sort of. Do you want to just move forward with the Capitol Hill update, Caroline, and then I can sort of go back in terms of advocacy?
Yeah, that sounds great. What a great question. So of course, there's a new administration, and with that comes new opportunities. We're anticipating the priorities being infrastructure, kind of a big infrastructure push, as I mentioned. WIOA reauthorization, maybe a little bit further down the line. And we're hoping HEA authorization is also a priority, but a little bit more immediately, kind of in the next couple of weeks. We have been hearing that Congress wants to have a next stimulus bill to the president by the, oh, thank you. Yes, HEA is Higher Education Act, and WIOA is the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, and it's the major funding bill for workforce. So those are sort of the large priorities for the entire administration. And then let me take a step back and talk about just kind of the next couple weeks. Yes, Congress is hoping to have a next stimulus bill maybe by the second half of March, because that is when the current UI extensions run out. So that means the focus on proposals to be included in that package and conversations about, its scope are going to ramp up over the next couple of weeks. The White House did release their overview of what they want to see in the next package, and it didn't include workforce, which is where a lot of the advocacy that we're doing, that we've been doing since December comes in, and that we're hoping to inform that piece and make sure that all of the priorities that are important to us and our network are included, especially after we didn't really see workforce funding in the last couple of stimuli, and we didn't see really any increase for workforce funding in the end of the year annual appropriations package. So investments are crucial. We've also sort of seen a suite of bills introduced in the past week and about to be introduced. Things like the Recovering America's Workforce Act. What do I think that is, given the number of people who need to get back to work? I think there's just this incorrect assumption from members of Congress that workforce investments are a part of later recovery, which, as we know, is not true. It needs to be a part of the immediate solution. And, workforce is essential to recovering from this crisis. And that's sort of why we've been having this long investment campaign, and we're hoping to influence the next stimulus. And we're hoping that through our continued advocacy that Congress can see workforce as an imperative now, rather than something that we get to, 6 months from now. I think those are all my comments about kind of what we're seeing in the workforce world over the course of the administration and more immediately. And then Jessica, do you think that's a good transition into what we're kind of working on now?
Sure. And then I just want to lift up that Rebecca added something else too before you hop off, Caroline. So in terms of, she said, why do you think that is, given the number of people who need to get back to work, that why Congress is not seeing this as a priority right now?
Yeah, I think that just speaks to kind of this incorrect framework that we're seeing from the Hill, that investing in workforce is something that can wait and be a part of later recovery, when really what we're hearing from so many of our partners is that we need to be investing now.
Thank you. So I guess if it's okay, Rebecca, I actually want to pause just to make sure, because that was also a lot of information about the Capitol Hill update before we talk about our advocacy. If anyone, just wanted to leave a little bit of space if people wanted to ask any follow-up questions.
This is Rebecca. I am wondering if there's any unexpected champions that you're seeing, or specific leadership that you think is really going to be friends of the workforce, the workforce advocates.
Sure. Like in Congress, you mean Congress members?
Yes.
I think hopefully, and what we're trying to do is mobilize a broad coalition of members of Congress who are seen as workforce champions. I was on a webinar the other day, and it was a wild statistic. It was something like 40% of all members of Congress have 2 years of experience in Congress or less. So there's a lot of new membership, and hopefully with the new people, we'll be able to convert them into being workforce champions. And I think in terms of, current champions, there's kind of all the classic contenders, Portman, I'm sure you're all very familiar with, although he, of course, just announced his retirement soon. Kane is another big one. Bonamici. So we definitely have some allies up there on the Hill, but are, of course, working to get an even broader ally.
So we had one more question in the chat that is about, this is a great question. Do you think the lack of focus and upcoming funding has anything to do with concern over the ROI of the WIOA investments?
That is a great question. It's hard to say, you know, because as I'm sure all of you know, so much of the funding that goes to WIOA, when it actually gets down to the states, you know, so much of it is spent on the infrastructure around these programs rather than actual job training dollars. So it's kind of a catch-22 where, you know, you need more funding to see the return on investment for investment in WIOA. But I think that's a great point. And I think it's probably, yes, probably partially the concern.
If I could add to that, something that I've heard on the ground when people have been talking to their members also is this idea that, I mean, it's also a matter of who's advocating right now, right? Which is queuing us up perfectly for this next part, but is the idea that very real concerns over housing and childcare and unemployment insurance have, you know, like completely taken the stage and in terms of advocacy, which makes perfect sense, right? Those are all very, very important. And it's easy when all of these things feel so immediate that something like skills training is like, well, you know, people are still quarantining or, you know, they're not able to even be in the classrooms right now. I mean, something that we've heard from community colleges across the country is that they are hemorrhaging money. They're about to sort of go bust. But members of Congress assume that they're going to be the frontline responders when people are actually ready to get reskilled. And if they're not around, if they're out of business, you know, the training providers, if those partnerships have fallen apart in the meantime because they're so underfunded, then they're actually not going to be around when it actually comes time for us to have the opportunity to really get moving again. And so that perspective needs to be shared. And then also just the idea that the unemployment is, you know, the landscape is going to necessarily shift and this can't wait. It just feels, I just feel like from the advocacy that's happening with other things as well, it's just really hard for them to understand how workforce comes to the top of that. Or like also I think an ignorance about the role of the workforce system in terms of everything else. Especially with the members themselves and not necessarily the staff that are working with them in terms of creating their priorities, which is why it's so important for them to see that right now before they come back in session on February 8th, which brings me very, very neatly actually to the advocacy that we're doing currently. So I mentioned at the beginning of the call that several of you have, we've had the opportunity to have several of you in DC historically. Early February is historically when we have our Skills Summit, which is our big fly-in where people come from all over the country to speak with their members of Congress in person. That obviously is not happening this year because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So that has changed the shape of how this advocacy has looked. We're also have a brand new administration after one of the most tumultuous transfers of power we've ever seen. And everything is very divisive. And, you know, the virtual advocacy world is pretty different. And so this has actually been extended over the course of 2 months. This campaign started in December, and then it's actually ending, like I mentioned, on February 8th. And the point of this is for everyone to get in front of their members and talk about this need for investment. So if you see the slide here, it's broad-based, just like the Skills Summit is. So it's anyone that considers themselves a workforce advocate that would normally come to the Skills Summit. But we're also including Business Leaders United to this push as well, which is a little new for us. it's to introduce your delegation, your state delegation, to your members. Even if you already have a relationship, this is a new Congress, you know, they're lining up their priorities in a different way. It's an opportunity for you to put your materials in front of them, what your organization does, to position yourselves as experts in the field. It's to lift up the visibility of the need for this funding and the immediacy of this need, like we've just talked about, because it's not on their minds from what we can tell. And we just really need to make sure that that happens. And then in terms of timing, like I said, they're going to return on February 8th. So right now, every office, especially new offices, are thinking about, you know, what they want to lead with, what they want to be champions for, what matters. This is an opportunity for a bipartisan win for them. You are not asking them for a little bit of time, you know, thank you so much for that. It's that you're offering them a real opportunity to tag on to something that has bipartisan interest and is absolutely necessary right now. So you're offering them an opportunity to take this back with them and prioritize it. And they need that information from on the ground, and you're the one that understands where the need is and what that looks like. They can't get that without you. So it's actually, honestly, a public service for people to be talking to their members as their members are trying to figure out how they want to approach this new Congress. And so this event, like I said, started in December, ends in a few weeks. And in terms of the last leg of it, and this is a really nice collaboration with SkillSPAN. It's a little different in every state, but Rebecca, I don't know if Bashara is on, but I know that Rebecca and Bashara have been working to sort of set up these meetings already, and are really versed in this. And so there's still time left. And I'm going to talk about this at the end of the presentation as well, if you wanted to hop on to that. But that's sort of what we're doing right now, is just getting in front of your members, telling them who you are, figuring out what it is they're already thinking about, and letting them know that about the need for investment in skills right now. So the main messages are, number one, the new Congress and the Biden administration must invest in skills training and workforce now because it's essential to an inclusive economic recovery. Investments in job creation will only be effective if we train people for these jobs. And building back better, which is the Biden slogan, right? And is the Dem slogan, means including everyone, especially those hurting the most, in opportunities to train for newly created jobs in infrastructure and new industries and technologies. So does anyone have any questions about this campaign?
Yeah, hey, this is Joe from from Warren County Community Services. Mm-hmm. I just had this hopefully is a relevant question. Is in this effort, we're talking about like skills, but when I've been meeting with people, a lot of times it's other things holding them back from being able to go get those skills or get that job. It could mean daycare, it could mean transportation. So is this like the message that we send? Shouldn't it be that we need to holistically, especially adults who may be behind or in recovery or whatever, mm-hmm. help them holistically more than just the skills, because there's other issues that are holding them back. Like, how are we holistically helping the people? That's my question.
Absolutely. And so this is meant to be a general message, just so they understand that skills training is a part of the solution. It's certainly not comprehensive, and a lot of the language, that we're expecting to get introduced in the coming months. We had a bill last Congress, the Builds Act, which it falls into infrastructure as well, and those kind of things include, like lowering the barriers to supportive services, includes funding for childcare. So there is a holistic approach baked in, very sort of cut and dry, crude lifting up of skills training. But our agenda and like when it comes down to the brass tacks of those conversations, always already sort of includes supportive services, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but it's just my experience, and I haven't been in this field for a long time, but it has been that people have to go to different agencies, and different agencies actually have different eligibility requirements for, say, daycare versus jobs versus. So is there a better approach that is one agency or one workforce program that is holistically helping the people through all the barriers? And instead of having to go to OMJ for skills money, go over here for daycare, go over here, it's like, what are we doing here? So, you know what I mean? Like, is there a holistic approach in one agency that's kind of helping do all those things versus people have a hard time finding out where to go? Just my experience.
Yeah, I have a quick answer for that, and then I want to fill in anything I'm leaving out. But so another plank that we talked about is partnerships. So we have that at both, like when people are going to community colleges and other training providers, and then also in terms of just the relationship between the training provider, social services, and the job. So we want, like, what we're advocating for is the opportunity for someone to have the information about what jobs are available if they're looking for work, and then having a smooth pipeline that includes supportive services. And like, we're trying to sort of like fund the intermediary to make sure that all of those parts connect, right? So someone can pursue training for something that actually exists. So there's actually a job at the end of it, a well-paying job that has like career pathway, upward mobility opportunity. And that once they're in that training, they have access to career counselors and supportive services and things like that. And that those are in like working in collaboration with one another. So that way they don't have to do the onus is not on them to connect the dots. That it, in terms of a federal goal for there like to be one entity that does that, that is not something that we're advocating for as far as I can tell, but and I think it's because we've seen that functionally that's like, it tends to be the local connections that actually allow people to like move through pipelines. And so the conversations need to be happening on the ground. And so the policies that we've landed on are trying to create sort of like funding and support for people that are already doing that work, or encouraging people for there to be an intermediary that can actually connect those dots for those people, so it's not on them. Caroline, did I totally butcher that, or do you have anything to add?
No, that all sounds right. And I definitely hear and take your point about wanting more alignment between systems, and how much easier that would make it on workers, you know, especially so many of these workers are non-traditional students who are balancing 100 different things, and to have all these programs kind of in supportive services in different arenas, you know, it definitely doesn't help anyone. And that's really why we need kind of a comprehensive like re-employment reform to align those systems and to get more funding so we can do that.
All right, well, thank you.
Absolutely. And then Joe, also, I mean, the specific things that you're thinking about, I'm not sure how much of it like can be used at the federal level, but I would love to, you know, sort of explore that more with you and hear more about what you're thinking about. Like what you're saying resonates with me. Like I was a job developer and career counselor for a long time on the ground. And I'm just trying to sort of, I want to make sure to not minimize what you're saying because that's real. And I think like just like working with our government affairs team to just make sure that those dots are connected. The intention is there, and it might entail more conversations, you know, with you and others as things are actually rolled out, as, you know, like language is actually developed in order to feel like we're going in the right direction to address those things. If that makes sense.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And then, so that's the Invest in Skills campaign that's happening right now. And I mentioned all you need to do. Rebecca made it easy for you. And so you just need to connect with her if you're not already involved and you want to be a part of those initial meetings. Just to give you some perspective on what our advocacy looks like moving forward is that we're going to be focusing on infrastructure based on what Caroline already mentioned, which is that Congress is planning an infrastructure bill So we are following suit and saying you cannot put billions of dollars into a behemoth infrastructure bill and not put any money into making sure that people that are out of work right now can get the training in order to participate in that work. And so that's going to look a lot of different ways. And especially if you have specific anecdotes and things like that about what it might look like on the ground for you and what you're seeing from folks and what they need in order to participate in an infrastructure bill, I encourage you to share your stories with Rebecca since she's working at the state level, and then she'll also pass those on to us to make sure that we have a comprehensive idea of what you all are thinking. And so in terms of the activities and how Ohio can get involved, these are opportunities that that I can see right now. It is still developing, but like I said, please connect with Rebecca to participate in the Invest in Skills campaign. Sign up to both of our mailing lists. So both the Ohio Workforce Coalition and the National Skills Coalition workforce mailing lists. That gives you an opportunity on our end for national skills for digital advocacy in the meantime as well. So to add your organization to sign-on letters, and then any other sort of smaller, more like boutique advocacy pushes that we do. So for instance, if you work in post-secondary education or adult education, or, like working, have a lot of like manufacturing partners, there might be opportunities for you to plug in, and you won't know unless you're on the mailing list. And so I encourage you to do that. Again, Ohio is a lot more cohesive and a deeper delegation than we have in some other states. And so Rebecca's actually is the linchpin of both of those things. And so engaging at the state level would also be really impactful if you're not already doing that with her and the Ohio Workforce Coalition. And then, like I mentioned, emailing anecdotes. It seems like a small thing that doesn't matter, but it actually matters a lot. Caroline and her colleague Katie meet with offices every day, and they need to know. They ask constantly about what's happening. So when you're not able to advocate, it's really important for us to have in pocket data, actual numbers of people that are looking for work that have been turned away, people who are trained for something, but there's sort of, they need supportive services that are unavailable. Like those kind of stories are really important in order to connect the dots for members of Congress. So if you have things like that are pressing on you, please, I think the easiest thing would be to send those to Rebecca since you're already connected, and then she will forward those to us. Because like I said, they'll work at both levels. And then something that we're excited about is I've been working with the Ohio Workforce Coalition, and I imagine this being an Ohio Workforce Coalition led event, but we would support a skills forum. This is essentially an opportunity to ask a member of Congress from Ohio to speak to why they're going to be a champion for skills. It gives them a soapbox to talk about how they're going to make change and how they're going to pass legislation. And it gives you all an opportunity to sort of ask questions about what that looks like and hold their feet to the fire to make sure that it actually happens. It's a really great opportunity for all of you who have done advocacy in the past. It sort of is a way, it's like in place of what might be a site visit. So some people invite their members of Congress to see their organizations and to actually walk around. It's a press opportunity when they're not in session. This is an opportunity to do it virtually, essentially, and talk about how they're going to be a champion for skills. And so we'll be working closely with Rebecca to try to put something like that on over the summer. And so if you're interested in that, please make sure to, again, sign up for the mailing lists. If you have suggestions or inside information about who might be the ideal member of Congress, please let us know. But this is a really great opportunity for us to really make sure that, champions are coming out of Ohio. Did I miss anything, Caroline?
No, I don't think so. I also just wanted to take a moment and say thank you for letting me present to all of you. I'm newer to the policy team with National Skills Coalition for almost 2 years, but I'm newer to the government affairs team. So I just appreciate the opportunity to talk about our policy priorities. And that if you have any questions that you didn't get a chance to ask, I'll put my email in the chat as well.
So if that said, I want to hand it over to Rebecca.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all. I do want to let everyone know again that we're releasing our the Ohio Workforce Coalition's policy priorities within the next week or two. And I think a lot of the things I've heard mentioned here will feature prominently in what you'll see as the coalition's priorities. So please do connect with us if you want to plug in. There will be lots of opportunities to engage, and we certainly are eager to connect with more of you in the field. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you later.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.